What happens when you trash talk a man who defined greatness with silence and precision? A man who didn't need to speak because his shot was the answer. That was Larry Bird. Cold. Calculated. Deadly. He didn't draw. He didn't flinch. He executed. Then came Chuck Person, the rookie, calling himself the Rifleman. He ran his mouth. He poked the lion. And Bird? He didn't talk back. He just lit him up one jumper at a time. Every shot was a response. Every stare was a warning. Because in the NBA, there's one rule you never break. Don't disrespect Larry Bird unless you're ready to watch your own words burn on national television. In 1986, the Indiana Pacers were a franchise desperately searching for identity. They didn't have a marquee star. They didn't have a winning culture. What they had was a lot of losses and one draft pick that would change the tone of their locker room. With the 4th overall pick, they selected a forward out of Auburn University. Not the flashiest name, not the most hyped prospect, but this kid Chuck Person had something more dangerous than talent. He had belief, and he had a nickname that wasn't given lightly: the Rifleman. Not because he liked to shoot, but because he liked to kill your confidence one jumper at a time. Chuck arrived in the league with the swagger of a veteran and the mouth of a man who feared no one. He walked into arenas with that look. That dare you to check me kind of stare. Most rookies enter the NBA trying to survive. Chuck entered it like he was coming to take over. He didn't flinch at the banners in the Boston Garden. He didn't care that the legends he watched on television were now standing across from him. Magic? Whatever. Kareem? Cool. But Larry Bird? That was the one. The one he wanted. Bird wasn't just a legend, he was a myth. The silent assassin. The guy who backed up every smirk with buckets. And when Chuck laced up against the Celtics for the first time, the energy in the building felt different. There's a certain hum in the Garden when Bird's hunting, and Chuck felt it. But he didn't run. He didn't hide. From tip-off, he played aggressive, confident, cocky. He hit a couple early shots, and that's when Bird leaned in stone-faced and whispered, "Shoot the ball, rookie. Go ahead." It was a challenge wrapped in calm. A chess move disguised as trash talk. Chuck didn't hesitate. Bang. Swish. And that's when he turned, locked eyes with Larry, and fired back with a line that would stick in Bird's mind like a splinter. Chuck Person said, "First time I touched the ball, their first game, he said, 'Shoot the ball, rookie. Shoot it, shoot.' I said, 'Okay, I'll shoot.' Wow, like that. And it went in. I said, 'Don't ever tell me shoot the ball.' I shoot it every time, and from then on, it's been a battle from last secure." That wasn't just a comeback. That was a declaration. And Bird heard him. He didn't respond. Not with words. Just a slight nod, like a general marking down a name for later. Because that's how Larry Bird worked. He didn't always bark back in the moment. He recorded. Every slight, every smirk, every rookie with too much mouth. He archived it in his internal vault, and when the moment came, he turned it into vengeance. Chuck kept firing that game. And Bird? He played it cool. But inside, a fuse was lit. What Chuck didn't know and what so many learned too late is that Bird thrived on disrespect. He needed it. It sharpened his vision. It slowed the game down. It made everything personal. And now, thanks to Chuck, it was personal. Their rivalry would burn for years. Chuck Person loved to talk trash. He'd clap after threes, bark at the bench, stare down defenders. And Bird, he'd just stare right back. No smile, no nod, just ice. But behind that icy exterior was a storm building. Because Larry Bird never forgot. He was the kind of player who could wait a season or 5 for the perfect moment to strike. And when that moment came, it wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be flashy. It would be clinical, ruthless, legendary. And Chuck, he'd never forget it either. Because when you challenge a legend, you don't just play the game, you enter the story. By 1990, the rivalry between Larry Bird and Chuck Person wasn't just a footnote, it was a storyline. And like all good stories, it had evolved. The fire between them had been smoldering for 4 long years. Chuck still had his swagger, still had his shot, still had that defiant glint in his eye whenever he walked into Boston Garden. But Bird was changing. The injuries had taken their toll. His back, riddled with herniated discs, made every jump feel like falling off a cliff. He moved slower, warmer longer, winced more. Well, I figured he'd want me on this team so he'll have a chance to win since he's not playing, so, it's unfortunate that he's not playing because I know that people are really coming to see that play, but it's great that he can still have the game and be able to attend. But make no mistake, Larry Bird was still Larry Bird. The fire hadn't gone out. And on the 25th of December, 1990, that fire was ready to burn again. It was a Christmas Day showdown. Pacers versus Celtics broadcast live to the nation. The NBA's holiday gift to fans. But for Chuck Person, it was something more. A chance to poke the legend one more time. Before the game, Person couldn't resist. Standing in front of reporters, lights flashing, microphones buzzing, he delivered his message loud and clear. The Rifleman is coming. And I'm going bird hunting. It was classic Chuck. Confident, cocky, calculated. But here's the thing. You don't taunt a wounded lion. Bird heard the quote. He always heard. He didn't say much. He just tucked it away like a bullet in the chamber, waiting for the perfect moment to fire back. The first half played out like a grudge match. Bodies flying, elbows swinging. Bird took a few hard falls, got up slower each time. But the eyes? Still cold, still sharp. Then, in the second quarter it happened. The Celtics ran a high screen. Bird drifted to the corner right in front of the Pacers bench. The ball swung his way, and without hesitation, Bird let it fly. Splash. A perfect three-pointer. But that wasn't the moment. The moment came after. As the ball dropped through the net, Bird didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He didn't even look at his teammates. He turned slowly and locked eyes with Chuck Person. That stare? It wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was surgical. One game on Christmas Day, Chuck Person, nicknamed the Rifleman, said prior to the game against the Celtics that the Rifleman is coming and he's going bird hunting bonded, and told Chuck Person that he had a Christmas present waiting for him during the game. When Person was on the bench, Bird shot a three-pointer on the baseline right in front of Person immediately after releasing the ball. Bird hits a Person Merry Christmas, and of course the shot went in. And then, with the smoothness of a man who'd been planning this for 4 years, Bird leaned in and whispered just 2 words, Merry Christmas. It was a sniper shot, clean, precise, personal. That wasn't just a three-pointer. That was punishment, because Larry Bird didn't need volume to be lethal. He didn't need antics. He didn't need to dance or scream or throw up a hand sign. He let his game talk. And when it did, it told stories people would never forget. Chuck Person didn't have a comeback. Not in that moment. Not when Bird walked past his bench with that ghost-like calm, the kind of calm that only comes when you know you've won something deeper than points. You've won the moment. Christmas Day wasn't just another game. It was a statement of legacy. Bird was showing the world that even on a broken back, even in the twilight of his career, even when the new guns tried to rise up, Larry Legend still ran the show. And for Chuck Person, that was the price of talking. Because you can aim your words at Larry Bird all you want. But when he fires back, he doesn't miss. By the spring of 1991, the Boston Celtics were no longer kings. They were warriors, bruised, battered, and carrying the weight of their dynastic past. The Big Three, once feared across the league, were now limping toward the twilight of their careers. Kevin McHale's knees were bone on bone. Robert Parrish was moving like a shadow of his younger self. And Larry Bird? Larry Bird was playing in pain that most men couldn't even sleep through, let alone compete in. His back had become a prison. The same spine that once carried him to 3 championships and 3 MVPs was now betraying him. Bone spurs stabbed at his nerves. Discs were crumbling. Some mornings, he couldn't even bend over to tie his shoes. Team trainers had to lace them up for him.
You hurt your back. How does that feel right now?
Well, it's feeling a lot better. I mean, it's like night and day. Once I get leg pain, it's just it's a different life. It's a different person in this body, and it's hard for me to function when that happens.
But you'd never know it by looking into his eyes, because the fire was still there, still cold, still focused, still burning, with unfinished business. And that business had a name, Chuck Person. By now, the Rifleman had found his rhythm. He wasn't a loudmouth rookie anymore, he was a seasoned scorer. Dangerous, confident. And with every passing year, he kept circling Bird like a predator, waiting for the moment the old lion finally fell. In the 1991 Eastern Conference first round, Chuck finally got his chance. Indiana versus Boston. Best of 5. Winner moves on. Loser goes home. And Person came in guns blazing. In Game 2, Chuck exploded for 39 points, torching the Celtics from every angle. He was hitting from the corner, pulling up from deep, shrugging off defenders like they weren't even there. He barked. He smirked. He talked that talk. It wasn't just scoring, it was a performance. Larry didn't respond. Not with words. His body couldn't move the way it used to, but the fight in his heart, that hadn't gone anywhere. The series was tight, brutal, and by Game 4, Chuck dropped 30 more points, tying the series at 2-2. Now, everything came down to one final showdown. Game 5. Boston Garden. One last duel. For the Pacers, it was a chance to prove they'd finally arrived. For the Celtics, it was a desperate attempt to delay the end. And for Larry Bird, it was something deeper. This wasn't just a game. This was legacy. The whispers had already started. That Bird was done. That his body had finally broken. That this right here could be the final game of his career. Could he survive one more war? Could he rise through the pain? Or would Chuck Person be the one to send Larry Bird into the shadows? That was the tension hanging in the air as fans packed the Garden. It wasn't just playoff electricity, it was the kind of silence you feel before a storm. A nervous reverence. Because everyone in the building knew they might be watching the end of something sacred. From the jump, the Pacers came hard. Reggie Miller was flying around screens. Rick Smits was eating up space in the paint. Chuck Person locked in, jawing. Eyes burning was hunting again. Midway through the second quarter, disaster struck. Larry Bird dove for a loose ball classic Bird, sacrificing everything for an inch and hit the floor hard. His head bounced off the parquet. He lay motionless. The crowd fell silent. Bird was helped off the court. Dazed, glassy-eyed, the back of his head swelling by the second. The Celtics, shaken, fell behind. It looked like it was over. Bird was in the locker room, being treated for a concussion, surrounded by worried trainers and doctors whispering about protocols and career-ending symptoms. But then, something happened. Bird heard the Garden groan after another Pacers run. He heard the crowd start to waver. And that's when he stood up, still dizzy, still bleeding. He looked at the trainer and said, "I'm going back in." The man tried to stop him. Bird didn't listen. He never listened. Because legends don't go out on a stretcher. I remember walking in the locker room, and I saw Larry before the game, and I said, "How you feeling?" Okay, I guess, well, he wasn't okay," ML Carr said. When he stepped back onto that court, the Garden erupted, and so did the Celtics. Bird didn't just play. He took over. He hit jumper after jumper. He backed Chuck down in the post and spun off him like a ghost. He barked orders, fought through double teams, out-thought and out-toughed a team with fresher legs. By the time the final horn sounded, the Celtics had won. And Chuck Person? He wasn't smirking anymore, because Bird, barely able to walk, had walked them down. That day, Larry Bird didn't just beat the Pacers. He beat pain. He beat time. He beat the doubt that was clawing at the walls of his legacy. And he did it his way, quietly, mercilessly, with nothing left to prove and everything left to give. Game 5 wasn't just a basketball game. It was mythology. Everything about it felt ancient, epic, inevitable. The Celtics' old warriors fighting their final war. The Pacers, young guns, smelling blood. And Larry Bird, walking the razor's edge between glory and collapse. Boston Garden was packed. The banners swayed. The parquet gleamed like a stage built for legends. But from the opening tip, something wasn't right. Bird was stiff, his movement mechanical. Every time he bent down, you could almost hear his spine scream. The pain had become visible, palpable, like gravity had turned against him. Early in the second quarter, disaster struck. A loose ball skidded across the floor, and like he'd done 1,000 times before, Bird dove for it head first. But this time, He didn't get up. He hit the floor with a sickening thud. His head bounced off the hardwood. His legs went limp. For a moment, it didn't feel like a fall, it felt like a final scene. Bird lay there, clutching the back of his head, his entire body locked in pain. Teammates rushed over. The crowd fell into a stunned silence, not like a player had gone down, like something sacred had broken. He was helped to his feet barely, limiting his weight, moving in slow, shallow breaths. A trail of blood stained the back of his jersey, and as he was escorted into the tunnel, the fear was real. Was that it? Was that how Larry Bird's career would end? The Celtics, still dazed, stumbled through the rest of the quarter. And the Pacers? They smelled blood. Reggie Miller attacked. Smits pounded the paint, and Chuck Person locked in, licking his chops, started cooking. Pull-up jumpers, baseline fadeaways, corner threes. Person was on a mission. By halftime, Indiana had the edge. By the start of the third, they were rolling. It felt like momentum had shifted forever. Then, it happened. Midway through the third quarter, the camera panned to the tunnel, and there he was. No trainers, no towel, no grand entrance. Just Larry Bird head wrapped. The garden exploded. Fans stood, screamed, roared like a crowd witnessing resurrection. Larry didn't wave, didn't pump his fist. He just walked back onto the floor like a man reporting back to war. What followed wasn't a comeback. It was a miracle. Bird checked in. No words. No warm-up. Just fire. A mid-range jumper. Nothing but net. A fadeaway over a double team. Pure silk. He swung passes like a quarterback, no-look dishes. Needle threading assists. Then a three-pointer from the wing, bang. The Celtics fed off him. McHale got his legs back. D. Brown attacked the rim. The energy shifted like a wave crashing back on Indiana. And Chuck Person kept fighting. He barked. He hit shots. But the rhythm was off. The swagger started to falter. Because in that building, at that moment, there was only one force moving history. And it wasn't Indiana. It was the man playing through spinal agony with his head wrapped like a soldier. Every time Bird touched the ball, the arena shook. Every time he hit a shot, it wasn't just points, it was punctuation. By the final minutes, Boston had pulled ahead. Indiana clawed back to within one possession. They had chances, but Bird closed the door. With a clutch rebound, a surgical assist, a dagger jumper that left no doubt. Final score, Celtics 124, Pacers 121. Larry Bird, 32 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. Once they cut it down, that was 7 points I got back in. I think our 9 points, and everybody was a little rattled at that time. No victory lap, no chest beating, just Kiat defiance. He walked off the floor the way he played, head high, shoulders square, pain buried beneath presence. The Rifleman had brought the bullets, but Larry brought the last word. He didn't just win the game, he won the story. Because this wasn't about stats, it wasn't about age, it wasn't even about basketball anymore. It was about something deeper. The refusal to die quietly, the will to rise when every nerve screams, stay down. The belief that even when your body gives out, your spirit can still fight. In that game, Larry Bird gave the world his final masterpiece. He wasn't supposed to play. He wasn't supposed to finish. But legends don't follow scripts. They write their own. Years passed. The sneakers were hung up. The arenas quieted. The roar of the crowd faded into memory. The rivalry? That too softened with time. There were no more elbows. No more stare downs. No more words whispered mid-fadeaway. The war had ended. But the echoes, they stayed. Chuck Person went on to coach. Larry Bird, too. Both transitioned from players to mentors, from scorers to storytellers. And every once in a while, they'd cross paths off the court this time, in suits instead of jerseys, with smiles instead of snarls. At one charity event, the cameras caught a moment that summed up everything perfectly. Larry Bird stood at the podium, microphone in hand, grin creeping across his face. "Chuck works for me now," he said dryly. "He mows my lawn in the summer." The crowd chuckled. But Chuck didn't miss a beat. He leaned in, shot back with a grin. "If it wasn't for me, you'd be averaging 40 a game." The room erupted. But that wasn't banter. That was respect. Because the greatest rivalries don't end in hatred. They don't dissolve in bitterness. They evolve into mutual understanding, into a strange kind of bond. One forged in fire, hardened in competition, honed in those moments when it's just you and him, and the noise fades, and the crowd blurs, and the only thing that matters is who breaks first. Bird never forgot Chuck. And Chuck? He never stopped respecting Larry, because he knew what few truly understood. That on that night, in that game, in that garden, he didn't just face Larry Bird. He activated him. He summoned the part of Bird that most opponents never saw. Not the polished legend, not the 3-time MVP, but the fighter, the man who bled through bandages, the man who walked through pain like it owed him rent, the man who didn't just want to win but wanted to remind you who you were playing against. Chuck Person was more than a footnote in Bird's career. He was a spark. And in the end, that's the highest honor a rival can offer. To pull something extraordinary out of the man standing across from you. Because that's the thing about true rivals. They don't just meet on the court. They don't just trade buckets or barbs. They reach into each other's souls and pull something out that wasn't there before. They don't compete to destroy. They compete to elevate, to push boundarietto, force the other man to climb a mountain he never meant to summit. Chuck Person brought heat unapologetic, loud, swaggering firepower. He poked the bear. He lit the match. And for a moment, it looked like the flames might consume everything. But Larry Bird? Larry didn't flinch. He took that fire and forged something with it. Something deeper. He showed that greatness isn't a performance, it's a sacrifice. It's not just a stat line or a trophy case. It's what you do when your legs go numb, your head rings, and every muscle tells you to quit. It's what you reach for when pride won't carry you and pain is all that's left. And still you rise? That day, Bird didn't just return to the floor, he rose from it. The Boston Garden didn't just witness a comeback, it witnessed a resurrection. He played with one good eye, blurred vision, a splitting headache, and an injured spine. And yet he made the passes. He drilled the shots. He lifted his team one final time. Not with speed, not with power, but with sheer will. With a soul that refused to yield. Chuck Person brought the rivalry. And Larry Bird? Larry turned that rivalry into a defining moment. Not just of a series or a season, but of an entire era. Because that's what the great ones do. They don't wait to be remembered. They carve their names into time. One fearless play at a time. One broken bone at a time. One unforgettable game. When legends aren't just made, they're proven. If you like this video, don't forget to press the subscribe button and ring the bell to receive notifications about the latest videos from our channel. Please leave your comments and suggestions below in the comments section, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. This action also contributes to motivating us to work even more diligently. Have a great day.